What's up, losers? Today I've got some more posts from r/fatlogic to react to. This is episode 17, What's Been Going On in the Fatosphere Lately. Without further ado, let's find out.
And also that even if fat caused health problems, there is still no weight loss method to date that 1. Works, and 2. Doesn't cause worse health risks, including high risk of heart failure. It's not just you that it doesn't work for. Less than 5% of people who diet ever maintain the weight loss they achieve. And those who do maintain it often develop serious health problems from continuous starvation, which can, and does, lead to death. It's definitely not a case of not doing it right, because it doesn't work.
What even is this post? Like the whole way it's structured, is basically throwing a bunch of anti-diet propaganda at the wall and seeing what sticks. At the beginning it implies that fat doesn't actually cause health problems. But then it asserts that the health consequences of weight loss are worse than those of obesity anyway. But surely you need to choose one argument or the other. If the health problems of obesity don't exist, then this comparison is unnecessary to begin with, and doesn't make sense. How can you compare the supposedly real health problems of weight loss with the supposedly imagined health problems of obesity? I don't get it. It gives one the impression that the anti-diet position being put forward is fixed in place, and everything else can just be worked around to coincide with it. Which is not how arguments are supposed to be made. This trend continues on with the post. It simultaneously asserts that dieting doesn't work, that dieting can work but that people often do it wrong by starving themselves, and that the problem with dieting is not that people are doing it wrong because actually it's impossible anyway. All of this combined produces a jumbled, incoherent mess of an argument that seems less concerned with producing an airtight case for its position, and more with capturing the imagination of a certain subset of the population that is already predisposed towards its conclusions, with attention-grabbing and hyperbolic claims that make them feel better about themselves in some way. So my response is, yes, dieting is possible, yes, it might be difficult, and a lot of people might fail or require multiple attempts. Yes, starving yourself is bad. But the health consequences of obesity are indeed real, and very dangerous. The only healthy, sustainable solution is to run a moderate caloric deficit, with a balanced diet, to stick with it long term, and to maintain at a healthy weight once you achieve it, which, perhaps not entirely coincidentally, is precisely what any diet program worth its salt would advocate for.
I recently was reminded of one of my fave games as a kid. Wii Fit Plus. Do any of you remember it? I'm considering getting it again secondhand, but I'm honestly hesitant, because as nice as the nostalgia is, I remember it being pretty fatphobic and calorie-burning centric. I remember there was a thing at the start where they had to weigh you. And for me, as a kid, the word obese was written in huge font over the screen, while me slumped over and looked sad. I could get over that pretty easily now. I know I'm fat now, but do any of you know if there are any additional fatphobic things that would impact the game itself? I just want to play ski jump and football again.
Okay, so I have kinda mixed feelings about this one, to be honest. On the one hand, it seems a little silly to criticize a game called Wii Fit for focusing on fitness, weight, and calorie counting, because that was very much how it marketed itself, and a lot of people who bought the game probably did so precisely because of this concept. But on the other hand, I don't think that this functionality should ruin the experience of the game for people who don't want to engage with it. Some people are just going to want to play the fun games. And there's nothing wrong with that. The story about the poster getting labeled as obese honestly made me sad. Because even if they might have had a developing weight problem at that time, kids should be able to play games and have fun. regardless of their size. I don't think being potentially embarrassed by their friends and made to feel unwelcome on their favorite game is going to improve the situation. Furthermore, I'm not sure that it's a good idea to introduce calorie counting to young children at all. Some action should be taken to keep their weight under control, sure, but I also think that kids should be allowed to be kids. And they're not emotionally or physically mature enough to be subjected to an adult diet plan. Calorie counting can also be problematic more generally, both because it can be triggering for people suffering from restrictive eating disorders, and because it might take the fun out of a game that someone just wants to play casually. For all of these reasons, I think that weight and calorie burning features should be included in games like Wii Fit that promote themselves as fitness games, but I think they should be able to be turned on and off, so that everyone can tailor their experience of the game to their particular preferences.
Thank you so much for sharing this. This could be compared to blackface, or cultural appropriation, in that it takes a job that should have been for a bigger woman, and gives that money to the skinny one. That discrimination. It's wrong, and it has economic consequences for plus-size models. It's wrong because it's hurting the mental health of the whole country. What the hell?
Well, first of all, it's probably not influencing the mental health of the whole country one way or the other. Because most people, have lives. But setting that aside, I'm guessing this post must be in response to some model that is apparently not fat enough being given a plus-size modeling job or something like that. My view is that, regardless of your views around what size should be considered plus size, this comparison to blackface and cultural appropriation is pretty tone-deaf, not to mention inaccurate. The problem with blackface as I understand it, is that it draws on a history of mocking, ridiculing, and dehumanizing black people for their features and mannerisms. It's a cruel tradition, rooted in a history of oppression and violence. Replacing a fat model or actor with a skinnier one might be upsetting to fat people. It might run counter to body positivity. It might even be unfair. But it's not really comparable to blackface. As for cultural appropriation, whose culture is being appropriated exactly? I hate to break it to you, but there's no fat culture. As much as fat activists like to pretend that fatness is an inherent characteristic, and that fat people as a collective are somehow comparable to ethnic groups. This just isn't the case. The problem with cultural appropriation is that it takes beautiful musical, artistic, spiritual, and other components of a group's culture, commodifies them, and sells them to novelty-seeking cultural foreigners, without permission from or compensation to the groups from which these cultural offerings originated. But what exactly are the cultural achievements of fat people? Just being fat, eating a lot. It doesn't really hold up at all, does it? How sad. So yeah, I'm not really blown away by this post. I'd prefer that people just complain about things with an appropriate sense of scale, rather than roping in much heavier, deeper, and more complex issues, in order to be taken seriously. If you have a problem with fat representation in modeling or media or whatever, that's totally cool. You're allowed to care about that. And you're perfectly entitled to plead your case. But please try to do so without invoking blackface or cultural appropriation next time. Okay. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's posts. Not gonna lie, there were some interesting points for me to consider in relation to them. Especially that Wii Fit one. What do you think? Should Wii Fit force you to weigh yourself and count calories? Should these features be included but optional? Is using models that are too skinny like blackface and cultural appropriation? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Or'll destroy you at Wii Sports Resort Table Tennis, haha. Anyway, catch you later.